it's spectacular to have you on, Brian. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Way too kind. Like way too kind.
No, it's seriously like your collection certainly rivals many, but it's specifically what you're doing with your passions, your interests, and everything that it seems is in you is now being produced for shows for people like me who also enjoy collecting, who might have one fandom or another, but really appreciate the backstory told in probably one of the best ways that I've ever heard stories produced. These types of stories specifically. Very entertaining, very upbeat, very accessible, and I love that. So let me, with that kind of on the table, what was the impetus for doing this? Like just starting down the path of producing this type of programming.
So it's interesting. I've been doing this 22 years. Toys That Made Us came out 3 years ago, and it got greenlit 4 years ago. So 22, I'm not good at math, 22 minus 4, I believe is 18. So for 18 years, I would develop stuff that I thought would sell. I would hear what the market wanted. I would find it, bring it to them, and make it. And I'm proud of some of the things we made, but I'm also really embarrassed by a lot of other things that we made. And Toys That Made Us during those 18 years, it actually, from the impetus to make the show to the day Netflix bought it, was 7 years. So basically, Toys That Made Us for me was always like my passion project while I was making all of these other shows that I had to make to keep the lights on and to pay my staff. So Toys That Made Us comes out. It was so hard to sell. I mean, even it was the luckiest break of all time that Netflix bought it. And like, not just like a lucky break, like, oh, I got lucky. Like a guy I was already working with at Netflix that was in the stand-up comedy acquisitions department moved over to a brand new department that had not existed at Netflix called Unscripted. And the reason why that's important is, producers get stereotyped. So I, at that time, was largely known for being a producer of stand-up comedy. So the problem I had with trying to sell Toys That Made Us was like, but that's not a comedy. But that executive, he had been to my house and seen my toy collection. So if he hadn't been changed departments, if he hadn't seen my toy collection, and if he didn't work at Netflix, I don't think there would be a Toys That Made Us.
Wow.
After Toys That Made Us came out, everything changed. And we were now allowed to produce things that were not stand-up comedy based. So we went very quickly. I mean, I cannot even believe it's only been 3 years. I mean, it feels like 10 years. But like now, when I look at all the shows we're making, they're all my passion projects. Like I have literally gone down my list and we're now in production on only passion projects.
Wow.
So did that answer your question?
Oh my God, yes. No, I think what we're doing is we're live producing how can I say this? I'm trying to be very meta. It's the toys that made us. How the toys that made us. Like it's very the behind the scenes look at this.
So I did not answer your question because your question was also like, where'd the show come from? And the impetus was very simple. I was at a Borders Books and I think it was Transformers. But for whatever reason, I was trying to find out, like, where did Transformers come from? They had like 15 books about the War of 1812 and no books about Transformers. And that was the impetus. And the pitch for the show for years was, why are you doing shows about this that no one knows about? Over 1 billion human beings have played with Star Wars toys. Why aren't we doing that? And that took 7 years before it sold.
Wow. Well, I can tell you the Toys That Made Us theme song every so often runs through my head. I may not have the lyrics memorized, but dun 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 dun. It's iconic, and it excites me because that which you created now has spawned these very reasonable and accessible other types of show series based upon different things. So you've got the movies that made us, and a toy store near you is a parallel, but not quite the behind the scenes. But I love just as much for different reasons. And then I saw on the Twitter account something in production. I swear I did, and maybe this is going to make me look really bad if it wasn't, but like gaming boxes that made us, or like gaming art,
video game artwork. Yeah.
Okay, so I grew up with the Atari 2600, and okay, great, because I would love to explore that, and even though I wasn't, I'm definitely not a video game nerd, absolutely not an angry video game nerd. But that was my era. The Star Wars figures, the 5 POA stuff, and the Transformers. Though I never had one, the cartoons of the '80s, and then those types of video games. And I've always remarked to kids these days that back in the day, the art is what sold the game, because in many ways was far beyond anything that the graphics at the time could be.
That's the understatement of the millennium. By the way, my favorite, and I'm just like you, dude, I'm not a big gamer, but my favorite, I remember as a kid being like, really? Was Yar's Revenge.
Yes!
The artwork on Yar's Revenge was like, they must have spent $1 million on that painting and like $11 to make the game. I just remember being so excited, because even though you don't look it sounds like we're the same age, but like, I remember being at a store getting a game and like, just the whole ride home being like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then, but with Yar's Revenge in particular, I remember being like, what does this have to do with the painting? Like River Raid is my favorite Atari 2600 game. For sure. One of my favorite video games of all time. The artwork definitely surpassed the technological capabilities of the programmers. Absolutely. It was still a fucking game.
Yeah.
But Yar's Revenge was like, did you just randomly buy a painting at a sale and put it on a box?
Okay, now I got to know the story. Now that's like the hook. I got to know where it came from. I got to know why.
Oh, easiest question in the world to answer. I'm the greatest director of all time. I didn't direct it. But wait a minute, I'm the greatest producer of all time. Wait a minute, I didn't produce it. We have a distribution arm, and luckily for us, very talented people, in this case, Rob McCallum, he made it himself. And I was in his shoes 10 years ago. These artists who make things, I mean, dude, what these people do, I mean, my heart goes out to them. And like I said, I used to be one of them. But like, it's like Boeing making airplanes before the world has invented airports. It's like he made a 10-episode show, or 8, I think. He made an 8-episode series with no distribution lined up. So he shot it, he edited it, he did everything. And then we were very lucky that I know Rob a little bit from before that. Now I know him well, and we were just very lucky because we're the only distributor that focuses on what I call pop history.
Oh, it's great. Like, I mean, it is, there are very few other production companies that I would consider myself, a fan of. Like, sign me up. I know what that is. I'm good. And I happened to catch it. This was in the second set of releases for a toy store near you. You had mentioned Nacelle as your production company name. I knew the Star Trek reference. I'm just saying, even though I love Star Wars, I know Star Trek just as well. You know, everything that's attached to it, your satellites, if you will, it's my demographic. It is the content that I crave, because even if I already know it, and even if I've already watched documentaries on the history of the ET video game and how it got produced, and the backstory behind it, the famed alleged death of Atari cartridge, I'd still watch another one, because I learn something different every single time, and I appreciate that. Being able to not necessarily connect with these people directly, but just feel like I'm a fly on the wall. And I'm sure people fan out, over you all the time. You get noticed and recognized everywhere you go.
Really weird.
Yeah.
Really weird.
Well, especially now, as a someone who doesn't necessarily live near a lot of independent toy stores, my comic store closed long before coronavirus hit, and they went virtual, and they just went out of business virtually, leaving me in the lurch. So I understand and have understood that pain, to the point where I didn't grow up with a comic store. We didn't have anything in Iowa, even in Des Moines. There just wasn't anything that we could walk into a store and grab comics from. So I've lived vicariously through the stories that have been shared, either through the people who made my childhood, like the toy creators and designers of the world, or all the way to these toy store owners who are still vending toys that you could walk into and just like fall right back into childhood. There's very few other series out there that I feel speaks to me, and that's something it's so incredibly rare.
Well, you're very kind, because that's what we set out to do. So
you've nailed it.
You're very kind to say.
So okay, this pandemic hit, and this was like, I could feel that pain as a small business owner myself, like having to change things. Luckily, I wasn't necessarily in the same position where I have a storefront. But how soon were you able to get that going? Because you had to, record the interviews, get the footage, edit the footage, produce it, get the deal, get it in place, because you had the series released towards the end of last year. I mean, it seems like a really quick turnaround time for a toy store near you.
Yeah, so I mean, basically what happened was our California lockdown, I believe, was on March 18th or March 15th. And I was at Black Cat Comics, one of my local toy stores, and I was talking to the owner, a guy named Kyle, and I think this was on the 12th or the 13th. And I was talking to him, and I was like, hey, dude, like, what happens when the quarantine hits? Because as you know, nobody alive has been through a quarantine. We have now. And I said to him, I go, what happens? And I'll never forget what he said. He was like, well, I think my income goes to zero, but none of my expenses go down. Mm. So that was interesting. So that was on like a Tuesday or Wednesday. The next day, because I had two issues going on. Issue number one was I wanted to do something for the stores. I wanted to be helpful. And issue number two was, which turned out to be, by the grace of God, completely wrong. I didn't want to fire any of my staff. I didn't want to give pay, but I also didn't want to be paying people to do nothing. So after talking to Kyle, I called Billy Galaxy, who owns a toy store in Portland, one of my favorite on the planet.
First episode? It was the first episode?
The first episode.
Yeah.
And I called Billy, who I'm personal, like when he comes to LA, he stays with me, like we're friends. And I said to him, I go, let me ask you a crazy question. If I gave you a list could you shoot what's on the list? Because I'm thinking of doing a show where if the stores do the shooting themselves, we'll edit everything, we'll color correct, we'll do the music, we'll do the legal clearance, we'll do the VO, we'll write all the VO, whatever. But you got to shoot it. Would you do that? And he said yes. So the minute he said yes, I'm jumping around a lot. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. No, this is.
When season 3 of Toys That Made Us came out, like 4 months earlier, we had done a worldwide premiere party at about 30 toy stores all over the planet.
Wow.
So once I knew Billy was willing to do it, one of my colleagues, Rich Myrick, I asked him to send an email to all of those stores and see if they'd be willing to participate. Of the 30 stores, I think 22 agreed. So then I was like, well, let's then ask everybody. So we cut it off at 50. We got about 100 yeses, and more have come in. So all in, we probably got about 120. My goal is to do all 50. We should have at least 2 seasons come out this year. I am really going to try and do 3.
Wow.
But I mean, basically the way that works is, and Billy was the skate. I mean, call him the guinea pig would be the understatement. I mean, I think Billy had to do over 40 pickup shots, and now we normally have about 3 to 4 at the most, because we have improved the list of what we need. So, and that's basically what happened. So we created a contract. We sent contracts out. Billy started shooting immediately. We edited Billy's episode first, but we were getting footage from everybody simultaneously.
Oh, wow.
And then what we ended up doing was we started sending Billy's episode to the other 9 stores from seasons 1 and 2. And then they started shooting things to match what we had done in season 1. And as if that wasn't complicated enough, a lot of the reviews, not a lot, but we got feedback from season 1 saying there was too much COVID. And the gist of the criticisms were, dude, I got fired. I got a pay cut. My wife got I'm already depressed about COVID. I'm tuning into your show to hear about toys. I don't need half the episode employees crying. And for every director, it's different. But for me, the star I aim for is Sam Raimi. This is over 20 years ago. Sam Raimi said, and I thought this was so book Spider-Man. Sam Raimi said, I'm making Spider-Man. I'm not making Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. And I really took that to heart, because what that means to me is, and I agree with this, is my philosophy for directing and producing. Yes, I'm making stuff that's important to me. Yes, I'm making my passion projects. That's true. But at the same time, it's not a one-on-one medium. If I do my job right, millions of people could see our work. So I'm not one of these people where I'm like, fuck you, I want to make a show about toys and COVID. It really meant a lot to me. Did it hurt a little bit? Of course it did. But for season 2, we downplayed the COVID a lot. So I would say in season 1, it was like 60% COVID, 40% toys. And I think season 2 is 80% toys, 20% COVID. So we had to go back actually and get a lot more pickups for season 2. We actually had a couple season 2 episodes locked, and we reopened them to shoot more to push down the percentage that was COVID related. So
Golfer Dude 900, one of my subscribers, says he is a great director with that attitude. So you get a little check mark in that box, a little validation for that approach.
I hate golf, but thank you, golf dude 291. I appreciate the support.
Yeah, I'm not a
No
golfer
offense
either.
to your hobby.
No, I'm a mini golfer if anything. I don't even
Yeah,
think.
I love mini golf. That
Yeah,
is true. I do
I
love me some mini golf.
I don't even remember having golf or miniature golf for the Atari 2600 until years later. I went back and got the text label cartridges. The original. I think there's like 42 or something like that. I didn't want to complete the collection with the color photo representation, the box art on the cartridges, because I'm more of a perfectionist that way. And for whatever it's worth, Mega Mania was my favorite Atari game. Like, it was Activision all the way.
Great game.
And it's kind of warped me though, honestly, because that having grown up in that generation, I have not been able to keep up with the games, and I've played modern games, but I still long for that joystick type of game where it's just like the controller is simple, one button, and somewhat omnidirectional, and that's it.
Yeah, I was at my friend's house about a month ago, and I tried that new Star Wars game. Star Wars Squads or something.
Oh, Squadrons, right, yeah.
Man, God bless those people. I mean, it's like 80 buttons. I'm like,
I know. I had the same problem. I'm like, I was fine with the Atari, like the coin-op Atari. Yeah, but even the arcade game with the yoke is one button, right? And you move it around, you figured it out, and it was it. And I just feel like there's something, and there's a lot of retro games out there that emulate the style of older games, but they lack the simplicity. Easy to play, lifetime to master, I think is the quote from someone from Atari. I've
perfectly put.
But that's, and those are the games, that's probably why I'm more of a Tetris addict than anything, because I can pick it up on any system and play it, and I know the rules, and, so, that's what these types of programs that you're doing, that's what calls to me. It's remembering a simpler time possibly in my life where I didn't have the adult stresses. So I guess, for me, when I watched A Toy Store Near You, I felt different as a small business owner. I felt different as someone who's supported small businesses and toy stores, like independent toy stores, and lament the fact that I don't have one that's, incredibly nearby that I might be able to frequent, because that, if anything, I would hope, I want to hear a story from you years from now where a new toy store owner comes up to you and says, I started a toy store in Xville, unless they have.
Already happened.
Oh my God. Happened. Oh, yeah. Tell me.
It's believe it or not, I mean, this is insane, but it's happened twice. There's a guy, I don't know who he is. It was like a random thing. But he was fired during COVID and was given like $100,000 severance. Worked at the company for like 20 years.
Wow.
They gave $100,000, and he used the money. He's using the money to open a store. So we've asked him in Cleveland, in the suburbs of Cleveland. We asked him to film everything, and we'll make an episode.
Wow, that is amazing. That's amazing. I've been online for a number of years. I've hosted a number of events, like small events compared to larger cons. But the most recent event I produced was something called Galaxar, and it ran just for a couple of times. And the scope of it was we invited 50 local vendors who would otherwise sell on eBay or Etsy, and it was a mix between modern and vintage toy sellers or collectible sellers with those artists and crafters. So my hope was to be able to appeal to the father and the mother and the kid in the family, because it was, because I don't know enough about every particular toy to be the owner of a store, but I know how to host things and enable that. That type of experience may come back at some point in the future, but I certainly understand where that need to want to help these small business owners came from in driving a toy store near you forward. It's a spectacular way of showing small businesses the way they are and the reason they are, and you get to hear so much of the backstory that makes going into a small toy store or an independent toy store so wonderful.
I mean, that's what we set out to do. So I appreciate you noticing it.
Oh no, I mean absolutely, and that's it's definitely not. It's definitely not lost on me. It's easily when people ask, "Hey, what should I watch tonight?" It's like on a short list, like the toys that made us. Then a toy store near you, and then go to doom boom 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 boom. And I'd imagine you've got more series. I know you can't talk about necessarily on the horizon beyond what we've shared.
Yeah, it's always weird. It's so funny. Right around the edges of my laptop are all of the shows we're making right now.
Hey, just turn the camera around. Just point the.
Well, it's just so funny. I have to remind myself what I can talk, what's public and not. And I really, I'm telling you, similar to what I was saying earlier, 99% of the time, we either had 0 shows in production, 1 show in production, and if we were having the greatest year ever, 2 shows at the same time. We have. I'm looking at 8 series taped around my laptop.
Wow.
Our Disney Plus. We're doing a show with Disney Plus right now called Behind the Attraction. We're partnered with a guy you may have heard of named The Rock, and his production company, $7.
Wow.
That's coming out hopefully Q1, maybe Q2. And it's a deep dive into all the attractions at the parks, also known as rides. So that's I can talk about that. I can't say too much about it, but we are working on a series for the 55th anniversary of Star Trek. So that's coming out in September. We have more movies that made us. We have 10 more episodes this year. We have at least 2 more seasons of A Toy Store Near You. And now I'm in the category of stuff I can't talk about.
Ha! Sorry. I figured, Yeah, no, it's not. I knew it would be an awkward. I know. I knew it would be an awkward question.
We have partners who would fire and sue me.
It's okay. It's okay.
So, I want to be sued.
I'm not trying to throw a curveball at all. Just it's just kind of a curiosity. And speaking of curiosity, I before the stream, my daughter was asking. Her name's Jedi, and that's legit.
Wow.
So. My mom's name's Judy, mother-in-law's name's Elia, and my wife's
mom's name's Judy.
Ah, that's
Iowa and same mom names. Look at that.
That's kind of strange. Mother-in-law's Elia, and then my wife's name's Diana, so that's Jedi.
Wow,
so
crazy.
It worked. So she had seen when I was watching A Toy Store Near You. She had seen you sitting on your desk or leaning against it, and all the toys in the background. And we were going through them. And before the show, she said, "What are you doing?" Well, I'm going to be talking with Brian. You've seen him before on the TV. Remember this? Remember that? And she's like, "Oh, look. I know that's Luke. Is that Palpatine?" So yeah, and there's some Star Trek stuff. And so we were going through it, and I love when any kind of collector opens up their collection for everybody to see. So if you could only right now, something was going wrong, you can only grab one of the collectibles in your room. Which one would you grab?
Well, here's the good news, my friend. When you live in California, about every 2 years, you need to evacuate your house because of a fucking fire. So luckily, I can answer your question not with a hypothetical. I can tell you, and I'm going to give you, I normally answer this, I'm going to give you the full answer.
Okay.
I normally tell everybody what I took the first time. And the first time, I'll tell you the difference between the first time and the second time. The first time, I woke up, 6 a.m. I was getting up. My watch shook. Said, "You got to get the fuck out of LA. There's a fire." So my entire family, between me shouting, "Everybody wake up, everybody wake up," and the car leaving, was 28 minutes. The second time, because of the first time, I had made a list and then went down the list. So I'm going to give you both answers.
All right.
The first time, by the way, there is an object in my collection that is than the rest of the collection combined times probably 5.
Jeez.
We did not take that for the first fire because we forgot, because we were running around like crazy. So I'll tell you what I took. I have 2 Lego minifigs from when I was a kid.
Saw a couple of them possibly.
No, because they're over there.
Oh, okay. I didn't see them.
In fact, I'm looking at them right now, so I don't even have to think about it. 2 minifigs. I have the Raphael that I played with from Turtles. I have my R2-D2 that I played with. And then really possibly the 2 most important things here in the room. I have my original Ertl and my original Galoob diecast miniature Enterprises. So that's what and literally, dude, I grabbed them. Now they're all together, by the way.
Right, of course.
That first fire, I had to run around, look. So that's what I took the first time. And those were all things that were not replaceable because they were mine from when I was a child.
Right.
The second time, I got all of those because they made the list. The thing here of the most financial value, that was the first to go into the trunk. And then, you know, and I have the list. I mean, the list is literally over there on my fridge. It was stuff that had tremendous like, by the way, I have a lot of prototypes too.
Oof, yeah.
So, yeah. And by the way, I mean, it's, in my opinion, a lot of these are priceless prototypes, literally like pushed into a bag.
Wow.
I mean, luckily it got broken, but yeah, and I also have a fair amount of movie props. So I have a list of 18 things that if there's time, they go in the car.
Wow. You know, it's funny. I'm mostly a Star Wars collector, if not like primarily. And one of the things that I'd probably take would be my AT-AT driver, which was my first Star Wars figure that kicked off, you know, now this lifetime, some would call obsession, I would call passion or interest or hobby. Sure. So yeah, I totally understand the R2-D2 being like one of those things. People ask me sometimes, I say it'd be the AT-AT driver, and I blame Kenner for me saying AT-AT. You know, it's instead of AT-AT, which has now been argued both ways. One thing I wanted to ask you, because I didn't grow up with comic stores, I think I mentioned, I recently lost my quote-unquote my comic store and found it to be a tremendous challenge to find a replacement. And you know, I've watched, you know, a lot of documentaries about the comics industry, you know, across the streaming services, but there just seems to be this massive shift, not just between print and digital, but the way that the comics are done. And it seems that the industry is shrinking, but yet trying to expand at the same time. Had you ever been into comics as much as toys? Have you seen this change in a similar way with the toys as the comics, or?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll tell you what happened, and if you ask me why, I don't really have a reason, but I'll tell you what happened. I was all about comic books before I got to college. I was all about comic books during college. I got out to LA, and dude, it was like a light switch. I'll tell you what I was not into was nonfiction books. Literally like a light switch. I stopped reading comics and I started reading nonfiction.
Huh.
And it just happened. I think like a year later, I was like, I used to read comics. Like, I don't know why I did that, but that's what happened. And I mean, I probably had, by the time I graduated from college, well over 2,000 comics. You know, and I probably started collecting when I was 8 or 9, you know, with G.I. Joe and Transformers. And I just stopped. Since in the 22 years since college, I I mean, I probably bought 20 comics or less.
Wow. So
Yeah.
do you think it's a shifting demographic? Because, I mean, Marvel's still producing, at least digitally, at the same price as they're producing print. Like, $4 will buy you a comic that gets you digital and print versus $4 for just digital. Like, there just seems to be, like, no market. Or maybe there is a market. I don't know where that market is.
Let me say first, I am not an expert
Yeah.
in comic books.
It's not.
I'm not even that knowledgeable. But I will tell you this. Like so every now and then a comic comes out where I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I live in a lifetime where this is made. Last year, there was a comic series that combined Transformers with Star Trek.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Back to the Future. There was a Back to the Future. Wow.
No, it was Star Trek and Transformers, I think. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Oh my God, this is the best. You know what? I'm getting it wrong. I'm combining two things. It was a comic book that covered a theoretical 4th season of the old series.
Ah.
By the way, there also was a Transformers Star Trek crossover.
Yeah, I did hear of that.
I also got. So I bought I went to the comic book store. I bought the comic book. I brought the comic home. And it's like, it's one of these things in life where it's like, there's things we all do where it's like, you keep making the same mistake over and over and over again, thinking the outcome will be different. I opened the comic. I'm reading the comic. It was pretty good. It's pretty good. It wasn't the best thing I ever read, but it was pretty good. I finish it, and I'm like, this was $6. There was like 26 pages. 8 of them were ads. And it's not really just about the money, but it's also like, when I'm sitting there reading comics in 1989, there's no choice. Like, you got to wait a month. And it's like, oh, I'm excited to wait a month. Now, there's this thing called Netflix. There's this thing called Disney Plus. So I think that's sort of, I mean, I have a theory as to why I started reading nonfiction out of nowhere. But my comics is, to spend $6 on 20 pages and then have to wait a month just seems bonkers.
Yeah.
So in theory, what I want to do, but I'll be completely honest with you, I've never done this. I don't know why. Probably because I just can't track it the way I want to. I should wait for all 12 issues to come out and buy the compendium.
Yep.
I've never done that. I don't know why.
I tell you what, I feel the same way, and I will tell you the frustration. It's impossible to keep track of because there's just no organization or semblance of organization anywhere, and that's what makes it so critical to have independent stores who get to know you and your tastes and your interests. And when we lose them, I feel it just becomes that much more difficult to manage my fandom. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So,
and you know, let me just say one other thing.
Yeah.
Because you're a comic book guy, I'm curious to see what you think about this. I've never talked about this before. I've never been asked this before. So I got this Star Trek comic book and I read it, and I still have some of my older comics, and I'm like, I don't remember there being so few words. So I went back to like my G.I. Joe and Transformer comics, and it's like, there was so much story.
Mm-hmm.
Like one page would have like 9 to 15 panels, and someone's sitting there tiny writing these little dialogue, and the new comics, it'll be like 4 panels on a page, and I'm like, for me, it's about the story. It's not about the art. The G.I. Joe stories were, the G.I. Joe art, except for the covers, sucked.
Right. It was secondary.
The stories.
Yeah.
And the characters were wonderful. And that's been my experience with modern comics.
You know, I think you're right. I think it did flip at some point. I watched on Disney Plus. There's a series, and I can't remember the name of it, unfortunately.
616.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, 616. And there was one episode that specifically they were talking about the Marvel approach or the Marvel style versus the newer style, and it may speak to that transition.
I'll watch. I've only seen the Spider-Man episode. I'll watch that.
There's one, and I don't know what it was titled, but it was like one of the last writers of a comic, and he talked about doing it the Marvel way versus the new way of doing things, and it's different now because the industry's different, or they found a more streamlined way of producing comics, and seeing it operating as a business versus write the story and that's the business seems to be where a lot of that gets lost in translation.
Well, it's so funny you say that because I was at a supermarket a couple weeks ago and I saw a box of Triscuits and I was getting the box and then I noticed at the top of and to me it was like a regular box, you know? So I'm holding the box and I see at the top of the box, it says family size. I'm like, family size? This is just a box of fucking Triscuits. It's always been the I'm like, well, what's a normal box? And I start looking and the regular box is like a third smaller. And I'm like, I know when I was a kid, what I'm now calling family size.
Yeah.
Used to be Brian's size. So I was just, again, I'm not a comic book expert, but like.
Nor am I. Yeah.
Anything? Because it's like, if I'm going to spend, let's even just say $3, forget about $6. If I'm going to spend $3, and for me at this point in my life with 3 kids and my career, it's more about the time than the money. I don't want to buy a comic book with 4 panels of page. Like, it's going to take 7 million issues to tell the story. Yeah. And so that for me is, I think, what affected me.
No, I think that's more than fair. I've been prolific with getting our daughter toys, like a variety of toys. And right now she's very much into Lego. I thrift. So I will go and get like this massive bin of Lego bricks for like nothing. And minifigs and mini dolls and everything. I'm a minifig fan. I'm a figure guy. But like today I got like a series of Marvel Pops. They came in the advent calendar for like, I got like 25 of them for like $5. So I like thrift because there's no way I'm not going to spend $50 on that. You know, it's like, I'll wait till it's on sale, and it will go on sale, or I'll thrift. And thrifting to me has been the closest thing I have to a toy store. It's not exactly the same, and there's a lot of garbage, but the treasures sometimes that I've encountered it's exciting. It's the thrill of the hunt of thrifting toys.
I don't know if I'm splitting hairs here or not, but I'm about 2 things in a very big way in this regard. Flea markets and estate sales. Like before COVID, like my family, every Sunday we go to the Melrose Flea Market, and like almost all weekend long, like driving my kid to baseball practice, on the way back, we'll stop at every estate sale. The stuff.
Yeah.
Like, and it's because at the estate sale, all these people, because I don't know about in Seattle, but in LA, they hire companies.
Yeah, up here too.
To get stuff out.
Yeah.
So they don't care at all. So you could some of the craziest stuff I have in here comes from like flea markets and estate sales.
I think I got this at an estate sale. Not AFA graded, it is in plastic, but Darth Vader, Empire Strikes Back on card. I think I got it $50 or something. I made some kind of deal. 41 back.
How long ago?
It was a few years ago. Not my prized possession with Vader carded. I don't have a full collection, but I haven't had much luck with estate sales up here. And we don't really have flea markets. I was mentioning my event. My hope was to make it kind of a geeky flea market where 100% is the stuff that, really fits the demo of pop culture. Like I said, I may come back to it at some point. I couldn't figure out the financial structure around it. But the flea markets are exciting for that very reason. You never know what you're going to find. And the surprises, the closest thing I've had is Value Village, also known as Savers. they're I don't know if there's a chain in LA, but that's like the chain brand. Yeah, it may be a Midwest or a Pacific Northwest thing, but every day it's like a different inventory. Some garbage, yeah, a lot of garbage, but real gems. And that's the closest thing I probably have to a toy store.
One of the benefits to living in LA with estate sales and flea markets is a lot of people here who died were in the business.
Yeah.
No, they were in the business.
Oh, yeah.
So I literally posted a picture of this on Instagram last year. Like at the Melrose Flea Market, which is like one of the oldest flea markets in the world, there was a guy selling boxes of financial paperwork from the actor Brock Peters. You know who that is?
Name's not very familiar.
He was the actor, and he won an Oscar for this. He was the actor who played Boo Ridley in To Kill a Mockingbird.
Okay.
Like 80 years ago.
Right.
Played Admiral Cartwright in Star Trek VI, and Sisko's dad in Deep Space Nine.
Okay. Yep, I know who it is.
Died. Somebody went to his house for an estate sale, and here I am at the Melrose Flea Market, and I'm like literally looking at his water bill from 2005. I'm looking at his SAG membership due. Like that's what it's like to live in LA. Like, weird stuff.
That's spectacular. Oh, yeah.
I'll show you my best find.
All right. And by the way, I know you've got a hard 8, so we've got just a few minutes left.
So this is from a thrift shop.
Is that like crew or?
Well, first of all, do you appreciate the significance of what you're looking at?
I don't think I do.
There was no Star Trek 7.
Wasn't that? No, Undiscovered Country was
6.
6? And nothing after Undiscovered Country.
Generation.
So
it took me a while to find out what that was. And it's by the way, I paid $5. It's worth a lot more than $5.
I want to see, and I know, like I said, I know you got a hard 8, but now that you pulled out your most amazing thrift find, you're going to have me seeing if I can find my most. I'm digging through a whole stack. I don't know if I can find it. I found 3 vintage Star Wars Droids figures for $5. Like, just in one bag. I found, and I never had a lot of the Droids figures growing up, but this was a recent find. 3 of the vintage Droid Star Wars figures loose for $5 total. So it was shocking.
I'm pretty in shock right now.
That every once in a while you'll find a vintage figure, but like Droids, like it was incredible. Like I was shaking.
Those are all worth 50 to like 102, maybe even $200 a piece.
Easily, yeah. And I don't. I've given vintage figures away, but I've never flipped. I've never sold. I've completed my vintage run minus the droids and the Ewoks because they're just like insanely pricey because they were limited availability.
The toy I'll retire on is Vlix. I mean, that's my.
Wait, you have him?
I met. What?
Do you have him?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
When Toys That Made Us came out, they were about $20,000. After, you know what they're worth now?
Don't tell me.
180 to 200.
Shut up.
Yeah, MOC. Yeah.
See, I have to go loose. No way I could even come close to MOC apart from Chase's. That's incredible.
Vlix's gun, just the gun, is $1,000 to $2,000.
Dear God, that's crazy.
And I didn't understand what Toys That Made Us would do for collect. I didn't get it. I didn't know. And by the way, not only that, it was my first show on Netflix.
Yeah. So the reach.
Yeah.
I want to remind you that.
I got to jump, but
it's okay.
So
tell me
what I do now, by the way, when I'm doing, and by the way, I do this with Toy Store Near You all the time. Like, you know, the ET finger light from
Yeah.
right over there. So I always feel like I'm doing some kind of like toy insider trading. But anyway, yeah, I do have to jump.
It's okay, man. Yeah,
talking about that.
absolutely. No, thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love geeking out over this stuff. I do it anytime, day or night. So, thanks again. Take care.
Thank you, man. Take it easy.
Enjoy.
Stay safe.
All right, you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.